Here's a fully fleshed out, emotional cinematic story based on your title. Formatted for a YouTube video script of about 1,800 words in a single part, the day had started like any other, with sunlight slicing through the blinds of a quiet suburban home. But by the time he walked into the office, the world as he knew it was about to shatter. He had spent months preparing himself for this moment, or so he thought. Sitting stiffly in the sleek modern office chair across from him was the woman he once called his wife, the woman he had loved, fought for, and ultimately lost. And now, she had come not with a hint of reconciliation, but with papers in her hand, finalizing a chapter he never imagined closing. He had expected anger, frustration, tears, maybe even bitter words. He was ready for all of that. But what he wasn't prepared for was the sight that froze him entirely, her hand resting protectively on a rounded belly, unmistakably 7 months along. His mind went blank. The words that had been rehearsed, the speeches about moving on, letting go, were gone. All that remained was a deep, suffocating realization. He wasn't just losing a wife anymore. He was about to learn he had been losing a future too. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that life can change in the blink of an eye, and every moment matters. He tried to steady himself, to understand, to process. How had he not known? They had drifted apart, yes, but he had assumed the absence of intimacy meant the end. He had assumed the signs would have been impossible to miss. Yet here she was, calm but weary, and carrying a secret that would forever change the trajectory of their lives. He felt anger bubble up, not at her but at himself, anger at his blind negligence, his distracted heart, his inability to see what truly mattered. She sat across from him, eyes a mixture of exhaustion, sadness, and a quiet resolve. He could see how carefully she had crafted every word she was about to say, how carefully she had walked into this room, ready to protect the life growing inside her while also protecting herself. He realized that this wasn't just about a divorce, it was about survival, dignity, and courage, and in that moment, he wished more than anything that he could turn back time, that he could hold her and promise that nothing would ever hurt her again. He had been a workaholic, a man consumed by deals, meetings, and deadlines, and she had been the warmth of a home he didn't realize he had taken for granted. She had been there through everything, every struggle, every setback, every quiet victory, and he'd ignored it, thinking the world outside mattered more. And now, sitting across from her, watching the swell of her belly, he understood just how much he had missed. The tension in the room was palpable. She had come to sever ties, but he couldn't let her leave without confronting the truth, without acknowledging the life that depended on them both. The divorce papers lay between them like a barrier, a symbol of years wasted, of love that had grown cold not because it wasn't there, but because it had been neglected. He reached out almost instinctively, but stopped himself. She flinched slightly, not in fear but in careful calculation. He realized then that their relationship had become a battlefield, and both had been wounded in ways words could never fully describe. And yet, beneath the fear and resentment, there was a spark that reminded him of the laughter they used to share, the small moments of intimacy that had once made life feel magical. He couldn't speak. Every attempt to form words felt hollow, inadequate. Instead, he let his gaze fall to her stomach, to the tiny life that had been growing quietly, patiently, while they had been consumed by their own egos and misunderstandings. In that moment, the gravity of responsibility crashed down on him, heavier than any business deal, more terrifying than any personal failure. He realized he had a choice: walk away as a man defeated by his own mistakes, or step up and become the father he had always hoped he could be. Tears threatened to spill, uninvited and unstoppable. He hated that he had waited so long to see the truth. hated that life had forced this revelation upon him rather than allowing him to understand it naturally. But hatred quickly transformed into resolve. He could not undo the past, but he could shape the future. And it had to start here, with her, with this moment. She finally spoke, her voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. She explained everything, her fears, the loneliness, the hope that he might understand, the decision to carry their child despite the broken promises, despite the uncertainty of what would come next. He listened, absorbing every word as if it were a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. Each sentence hit him like a thunderclap, forcing him to confront his own failures and his own desires. He remembered the nights she had spent awake, worrying about the smallest details, carrying burdens he hadn't even known existed. He remembered the way she had smiled when he had finally noticed, the way she had laughed when he had made her feel seen. And now he realized she was doing the hardest thing she could ever do, facing the future alone, with courage he hadn't given her, and strength he hadn't helped nurture. The divorce papers sat there, cold and impersonal, but now they felt meaningless. He wanted to tear them up, throw them into the trash, and start over. But he knew it wouldn't be that simple. Healing would take time, effort, and forgiveness, not just for her, but for himself. He had to earn her trust again, not through promises, but through actions, through presence, through patience, through love that was deliberate and unwavering. The hours passed as they talked, not in anger, not in bitterness, but in raw honesty. He confessed his failures, his regrets, his blind spots. She shared her pain, her doubts, her hopes for the child they had created together, and in that dialogue, painful yet liberating, something shifted. The walls they had built around themselves began to crumble. Not completely, not immediately, but enough to let light seep through. Enough to let them see that maybe, just maybe, there was a path forward. He realized that fatherhood wasn't just about providing materially. It was about presence, about love, about being accountable in ways he had never imagined. And as he looked at her, 7 months along, he knew that life had given him a second chance, not just at fatherhood, but at love itself. It was terrifying, overwhelming, and beautiful all at once. She didn't forgive him entirely, not yet. Trust had to be rebuilt brick by brick. But she allowed him a place beside her, a seat in the journey they were now embarking on together. And in that fragile, tentative space, he found hope. Hope that love could be reborn. Hope that mistakes, while costly, could lead to transformation. Hope that the life growing inside her would not be just a reminder of what had been lost, but a beacon for what could still be saved. They spent the rest of the day in quiet reflection, holding hands, sharing stories of dreams long postponed, of fears long buried. He marveled at the resilience she had shown, the courage she had mustered, and the strength that would soon make her a mother. And he vowed, silently but fervently, that he would never again take for granted the life they had created together. By evening, the air between them had shifted. The tension that had been suffocating now carried a hint of possibility. They weren't fixed, not yet, but they were willing to try. And in that willingness, there was magic. A recognition that life's most profound gifts often come disguised as challenges, as heartbreak, as moments that force us to confront our deepest fears. He watched her leave that evening, her silhouette outlined against the fading light. She was still cautious, still guarded, but there was a softness in her eyes that had not been there before, and he knew, without doubt, that they were no longer the same people who had sat in that office hours earlier. They were changed, wounded, yes, but alive, and alive in a way that promised growth, love, and new beginnings. In the weeks that followed, he became more present than he had ever been, not just in her life, but in the life of the child who would soon arrive. Every doctor's appointment, every small discomfort, Every moment of anticipation was shared, and in these shared experiences, he discovered a depth of love he had never imagined, a patience he had never known, and a joy that eclipsed every material success he had ever achieved. The day the child was born, he held them in his arms for the first time, feeling the tiny heartbeat against his chest. He looked at the mother of his child, exhausted but radiant, and he understood that life had given him a gift more precious than anything else, a chance to be a man who could love, protect, and cherish. The mistakes of the past lingered, but they were no longer shackles. They were lessons, reminders of the fragility and brilliance of life. As he cradled the baby, he whispered promises he intended to keep, to be present, to nurture, to forgive himself, and to honor the woman who had carried their child with such courage. And as she looked on, tears streaming down her face, he realized that love had returned, not perfect, not flawless, but real, tangible, and transformative. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, and share this video. Let the world know that even in moments of heartbreak, hope, love, and second chances are always possible. Before you go, take a moment to comment below about the part of the story that moved you the most. It helps us continue sharing these emotional journeys with others who need them. Life had taught him that some moments arrive unannounced, uninvited, but carry the power to change everything. He had been frozen in shock that day, faced with a truth that could have destroyed him. But instead, it awakened him. It reminded him that love, responsibility, and courage often come at the same time, wrapped in challenges too great to ignore. And in embracing that, he discovered not just a second chance at family, but a second chance at himself. The office where it all began felt like a distant memory now. The laughter of a baby, the warmth of a family slowly rebuilding, and the quiet, enduring love between two people who had faced the unthinkable together. That was what mattered. And as he watched the sunset one evening, his family gathered around him, he realized that sometimes life doesn't give you the story you expect. It gives you the story you need. Messy, painful, beautiful, and real.